You know, your brain makes thousands of decisions every single day, but what if I told you a lot of them, maybe most of them, are based on flawed logic you can't even see? That's what we're talking about today, cognitive biases. These are like these hidden scripts running in the background of your mind, these little mental shortcuts that totally shape your reality, and you don't even have a clue it's happening. And this quote from Obi-Wan Kenobi, it just nails it. Our point of view isn't some crystal clear window to the world. Nope, it's more like a lens. And that lens is shaped and warped by all those mental shortcuts. And yeah, sometimes they're super helpful. They help us get through a complicated world. But other times, oh boy, they can lead us to make some really, really bad calls. So just to show you how tricky these things can get, let's kick things off with a real-world puzzle, a true story from history. All right, put yourself in this scenario. It's World War II. You're the lead engineer. You're watching these bombers limp back to base, and they are just covered in bullet holes. I mean, wings, fuselage, tail, riddled with them. Your job is to make these planes tougher. But here's the catch. You can't just armor the whole thing. It would be way too heavy to even get off the ground. So you're looking at all this evidence, all these bullet holes. Where do you add the armor? So what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably the same thing that popped into theirs. You reinforce the parts with all the bullet holes, right? I mean, it seems so obvious. You see the damage, you patch it up. It feels completely logical. And that's exactly what the engineers thought at first. But here's the twist. Following that obvious logic, it would have been a catastrophic mistake, a deadly one. It wouldn't have saved more planes at all. It would have doomed them. And the reason why uncovers one of the most powerful and sneaky cognitive biases there is. This is a textbook case of something called survivorship bias. See, the problem is focusing only on the things that survived the process and completely ignoring the ones that didn't. The engineers were only looking at the planes that actually made it back. Their data was totally incomplete. The real question wasn't, where are the bullet holes? The question they needed to ask was, where are the bullet holes on the planes that never came back? And the answer to that question was in the places where the surviving planes had no damage at all. The engines, the cockpit. You get hit there, you don't come home. So the armor didn't need to go on the damaged spots, it needed to go on the clean spots. So, why do our brains fall into traps like this? I mean, it seems so obvious in hindsight, but survivorship bias is just one of many, many mental traps we can fall into. To really get to the why, we need to pull back the curtain and look at how our brains are actually wired. Okay, so think about it. Our brains are getting bombarded with information, just nonstop. To deal with all that, they develop what are called heuristics. These are basically just lightning-fast mental shortcuts. It's what lets you drive a car or tie your shoes without having to consciously think through every single little step. And most of the time, they work great. But they're also where all our biases come from. The Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman came up with this brilliant way of looking at it. He said, we basically have two systems of thought. You've got system one, which is your gut reaction. It's fast, it's automatic, it's emotional. Then there's system two. That's your deep thinking. It's slow, it takes effort, and it's logical. Cognitive biases, well, they happen when we let our speedy, instinctive system one make a decision that really, really needed the slow, careful work of system two. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory from a textbook. These mental glitches, these biases, have huge, real-world consequences, especially when the stakes are high, like in a field such as cybersecurity. Remember the huge Sony hack back in 2014? I mean, it was a disaster. Personal data, unreleased movies, everything got stolen. The whole company was in total chaos. So what was their response? A massive, dramatic action. They just shut the entire network down, pulled the plug on everything. But in doing that, they might have actually made it harder for investigators to figure out what the hackers did. So you have to ask, was that the right strategic move, or was it just this powerful, overwhelming urge to do something? And that, right there, is something called action bias. It's this simple. When a crisis hits, we feel this incredible pressure to do something, anything, just to feel like we're back in control. But here's the thing. Sometimes that desperate rush to act does more harm than good, and the smartest, bravest thing you can do is just wait and watch. Okay, let's try another one. I bet anyone who's ever worked in tech, or really any office job, has a horror story about a massive crisis hitting at like 4:55 p.m. on a Friday. It just feels like all the worst stuff happens right before the weekend, doesn't it? But is that actually true? Well, if you look at the actual data, the answer is nope, not at all. This chart here shows when critical vulnerabilities were published over a 3-year period. And would you look at that? The big spikes are consistently on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Friday is actually one of the slowest days of the week. So what gives? Why do we all have these searing memories of Friday fires? That, my friends, is the availability bias. Because a crisis on a Friday afternoon is so painful, so frustrating, that memory gets burned into your brain. It's incredibly vivid and easy to remember. And because that memory comes to mind so quickly, our brain makes a little leap in logic and assumes it must happen all the time, even when the cold hard data says it doesn't. And then there's the big one, maybe the most famous of them all, confirmation bias. You know exactly what this is. Think of every TV detective who figures out who the killer is in the first 5 minutes and then spends the whole episode just ignoring any piece of evidence that contradicts their hunch. Well, guess what? We all do that. In cybersecurity, this is super dangerous. An analyst might get a hunch about a certain kind of attack, and then, without even realizing it, they start looking for and highlighting only the data that proves them right, while potentially ignoring the clues that point to the real threat. Okay, so it's pretty clear we're all vulnerable to this stuff. Our brains are literally hardwired to take these shortcuts. So the big question is, what in the world are we supposed to do about it? Well, here's the most important thing to understand. You can't just turn your biases off. It's impossible. They're a fundamental part of how you think. The goal isn't to become some kind of perfect logical robot. The goal is just awareness. It's about learning to spot the shortcuts your brain is taking, so you can step in and manage them. And here are 3 simple, practical ways you can start doing that. First, just slow down. Seriously, when you're facing a tough decision, take a breath and force yourself to engage that slow, logical system too. Second, question your first instinct. When an answer just pops into your head, stop and ask yourself, okay, is this really the most likely answer, or is it just the one that was easiest to think of? And third, think about what happens if you do nothing. That powerful action bias can make us forget that sometimes the most strategic move is no move at all. So I want to leave you with one final thought, a question to chew on. Think about all those truths you cling to, all the gut feelings you trust without question, and all the things you just know are right. Now ask yourself, which one of them might just be your blind spot?